Weeks later, a white journalist named Henry Wallace arrived in Millstone. A Yale graduate and son of a senator, Wallace didn't scare easily. He had been covering civil rights protests across the South and had heard about Elijah's disappearance. Unlike the locals, Wallace asked real questions. He spoke to Clara Bell, Reverend Lewis, and even snuck into the courthouse to sift through dusty files. What he found chilled him. Records showed Elijah had been arrested on the day of his disappearance for inciting unrest. There was no court record, no formal charges, and no release form. The sheriff's office claimed Elijah left willingly. In late August, a group of boys fishing in Black Hollow Creek pulled something from the water, a skeleton, shackled at the ankles, wrapped in barbed wire, dressed in the tatters of a linen shirt. Dental records confirmed what they feared. It was Elijah Rowe. The sheriff dismissed it as a tragic accident. The coroner ruled it a suicide. But Wallace had seen enough. He published an exposé titled "The Lynching You Weren't Meant to See." The article went national. FBI agents soon descended on Millstone. The FBI uncovered a pattern, local authorities collaborating with white supremacists to disappear activists. They found a bloodstained nightstick in the sheriff's evidence room and testimony from a deputy who had quit in guilt. But the all-white grand jury declined to indict Sheriff Harper. Insufficient evidence, they ruled. The town moved on. The sheriff retired 2 years later and died of cancer in 1972. No one was ever convicted. But Clara Bell didn't forget. She became a civil rights attorney, moved to Washington, D.C., and spent her life fighting for the people Elijah had died trying to help. In 2004, she stood in front of the U.S. Congress to read Elijah Rowe's name into the national record. She held up a faded photo of him, smiling in front of the church blackboard. "He believed in this country," she said through tears. "Even when it didn't believe in him." Millstone, Mississippi still stands. There's now a plaque at Mount Zion Church that reads, "In memory of Elijah Rowe, freedom worker, advocate, martyr." Children pass by it each morning on their way to school. And every July, Clara Bell returns, lays a single white flower at the edge of Black Hollow Creek, and whispers, "We remember." It was the summer of 1964 in Millstone, Mississippi. The air hung heavy with the heat of July and the weight of tension, a tension that could be felt in every rusted hinge of the town's creaking past. Colored folks had learned to walk a certain way, talk a certain way, and avoid looking a white man in the eye. That morning, Elijah Rowe had returned home. He wasn't born in Millstone, but his mama had been. He'd grown up in Chicago, where he studied law and worked as a community organizer. At 28, he had come south to help register black voters. With a calm demeanor, brown eyes that spoke volumes, and a quiet fire that lit his every step, Elijah was determined to change things. He was met with suspicion not just from the white townspeople, but from the black ones too. Change, after all, was dangerous in Millstone. Sheriff Walter Harper had worn the badge for 20 years. A tall, barrel-chested man in his 50s with a slow Mississippi drawl and a stare like cold steel. Folks feared him, and rightly so. In his county, black men went missing without explanation, and nobody dared ask questions. The sheriff was used to keeping order, and order meant keeping people like Elijah quiet. Harper watched Elijah from the first day he stepped into town. He wasn't loud, but he was smart, and that made him dangerous. On a sticky Wednesday night, Elijah led a quiet meeting at Mount Zion Baptist Church. They whispered about rights, read from the Constitution, and practiced how to respond if arrested. "Keep your hands where they can see 'em. Don't raise your voice. Always ask for a lawyer," Elijah instructed, chalk in hand at the blackboard. Sitting in the back, Clara Bell Johnson, a 17-year-old high school student, scribbled notes with shining eyes. But someone else watched from outside, Thomas Rayburn, a member of the White Citizens Council. By morning, word of the Negro Revolution reached Sheriff Harper's ears. On July 18, Elijah vanished. He was last seen leaving a voter registration drive near the edge of town. Witnesses said his old Ford was pulled over by the sheriff's deputies. That night, the Ford was found abandoned, door open, papers scattered across the dirt. Clara Bell was the first to raise the alarm. He wouldn't just leave. Not without his briefcase, not without his books, she told reporters from the Jackson Clarion-Ledger. The sheriff launched a half-hearted investigation. Maybe he got spooked and skipped town, he said, sipping coffee at the diner. But the black community knew better. Elijah Rowe had become the latest name whispered with fear in Millstone's dark corners.